We are going to get started, everybody. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Hey, Ben. Okay, let's get started. Welcome everybody to the Coastal Virginia CRS Workgroup. We are ever expanding into not just the coastal zone in terms of our member participation and attendance. And so you might hear us starting to call this the Virginia CRS User Group to be a little bit more open and welcoming in our name to everybody outside of the coastal zone. So we'll see if we technically change the name, but I just wanted to let you all know that. There are several people here in the room with us, which is wonderful, and we have a lot of online participation. So if you're new to us, we receive continuing education credits for every CRS workgroup meeting. And the only way in which you receive those CECs, if you are online, is to fill out this poll and to fill out the polls throughout the Zoom meeting. If you are in person, it's an automatic, you get the credits, you don't have to do anything. And if you're online, all you have to do is do the polls. You don't have to submit anything to, we've got lawnmowers in here, so hopefully it's not too loud. It's not, okay, cool. You don't have to submit anything to ASFPM. Wetlands Watch takes care of that for everybody. So we're going to leave the polls up and I'll obnoxiously say, fill out the poll, fill out the poll, fill out the poll, because we want everybody to receive credits.
Hi, you come up? Come here.
Oh,
Come here.
I hope that's an animal. Maybe a child. Okay, cool. So we're going to do introductions. Kristen has kind of taken the lead, so please take a look in the chat if you're on Zoom and fill out your information. The way that we do it is that you introduce yourself, you introduce what organization you're affiliated with, and if you are affiliated with a local government that is in the CRS program, please include your CRS score and your associated percentage of discount. Or if you are like Kristen and you're actively joining, you do as she has done. And Mark, perfect, explaining that they're not in the CRS program. Okay, so James City County, almost an A+, that would be a 25% annual discount to include as well. We're going to do introductions in the room first, and then we're going to migrate online. So if you are new, we will want you to unmute and introduce yourself to this great group of folks. And if you've already introduced yourself in the past, then please just use the chat like everybody else. We have a lot to cover today. Okay, my name is Mary Carson Stiff, and I'm the Executive Director at Wetlands Watch. We're a nonprofit based in Norfolk, working statewide on nature-based solutions to climate change and the impacts of climate change. So Wetlands Watch is the chair of this group. I think I said that, but just to reiterate, and we are very interested in all FEMA programs and the National Flood Insurance and CRS programs specifically, because the program is actually, controlling local government land use and decision-making for flood risk and for future conditions risk. And the CRS program is the only program in the country that's actually providing a monetary incentive for local governments to do more to protect against flood risk and also do more to protect against future conditions, which is super. Okay, let's have John Bateman introduce yourself. And let me switch over the microphone. We're just refreshing it here.
John Bateman, Planning Program Director with Wetlands Watch. Nice to see you all.
And let's use that to move it. Okay, Jenny.
Oh, in the room.
Yes, in the room first.
Sure. Jenny Sneed and Morton Thomas.
Consulting firm.
Consulting firm, have worked with a number of localities, and we'll be talking, maybe hopefully mentioning later, we're just starting off with the HRPDC.
Good. Okay.
Ken Hinkle, York County, we're class 7, 15% discount.
Yeah.
Charles White, York County, class 7.
Wonderful. And this is Charles's first CRS work group. Welcome to the party.
Good morning, everyone. Ben McFarland, Hampton Roads PDC.
And Ben is going to talk about the new Community Flood Preparedness Fund grant at the end of this meeting, talking about working with AMT on hopefully a regional PPI.
Deirdre Welch, James City County, class 5, and thank you, that's a 25% discount.
And Michael, County, class 5.
Okay, and class 5 is the highest CRS class in Virginia, and there are only 3 communities with the class 5. All right, and that's City of Norfolk, Accomack County, and James City County. Pretty amazing, all from this work group here. Okay, so if you are new online, please introduce yourself. I will call it. Anybody? Who's new? Caitlin, have we had the pleasure of meeting you yet from Henrico County?
Hi, I'm Caitlin Sinclair. I work with Kristen at Henrico County, and we're in the process of joining CRS.
Terrific. And are you a CFM, Caitlin?
Yes, I am.
Yay. Okay, who's next? Debbie, this is your second meeting, right? You've participated before. Debbie Gaskins with Portsmouth.
Yep, I have attended the meetings before,
Okay, terrific.
so.
Okay, I think that's everybody. Good. All right, so last chance to fill out the CFM. Okay, one more thing I wanted to note, Madison Teeter is on the call and she's down in North Carolina. She's our flood risk project manager at Wetlands Watch, and this is her last week with the organization. And so Madison has been working with the CRS work group for 3 years now, and we're going to miss all of the work that she does to kind of keep everybody on track and to submit all the information that's required. And so she's going to be presenting throughout the meeting today, but I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge what a great contribution Madison has had on our flood community in Virginia.
Thanks, MC. Really appreciate it. Gonna miss working with you all.
All right. As mentioned, we receive CECs for community certified floodplain managers every single meeting, and this is just a rundown. We'll kind of report out how many credits are received. It's a little all over the place, but consistently 1.5 at least. May, everybody got a little, which is super. And again, you don't have to do anything at all to receive the credits, except for answer the Zooms and show up in person. And we have one more person who's joined us. Mohammed, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm speaking late. Basically, I'm here as a replacement of Gala housing, which unfortunately lost it. We should have somewhere else, and we are trying to advertise for
Okay.
and more interesting. Knowing somebody appreciate the police out.
Okay. So Mohammed, if you didn't hear him, is with the City of Newport News. They're, I'm sorry,
Used to be Newport, right?
Hampton, hello, class 7, with the CRS program. Greta Hawkins, who you all know, has just stepped away from the City of Hampton as their CRS coordinator and floodplain manager. And so Greta let me know that you were going to kind of be stepping in, and there is an open position at the City of Hampton. So if you know of anybody interested, please let Mohammed know, or let me know and I'll let him know. Okay. All right. This is our monthly or bi-monthly plug for the Virginia Floodplain Management Association. This is a organization that we work very closely with at the CRS Workgroup. Kristen Owen is the president of VFMA, and she is on the call right now with Henrico County. And we just encourage everybody to participate and join. It's a great network. Kristen, any VFMA updates that you want to share?
I just want to point out that the call for abstracts for the conference is open. We're going to extend it. It was originally supposed to close at the end of this month. So please, if you have abstract ideas, submit. Even if you don't have like a full-blown abstract, but you just have an idea, like a title or something, feel free to submit or let us know, and we can, get a spot going so that we can get at least a draft agenda built so that people can start registering and get your travel approved and things like that. So that is on the homepage of our website, and I can post the link in the chat as well.
Yes, please do post it in the chat. And this is for the fall conference. So Virginia Floodplain Management Association used to have our annual conference with the Virginia Water and Lakes Association, Lakes and Watersheds Association at the Virginia Water Conference every year. But we have kind of moved to do our own thing and have a annual meeting in the fall as opposed to the spring, so folks can attend both. And the conference is, what is the date, Kristen?
It is November 13th and 14th, and it's going to be in Richmond again at the Westin where we were last year. So that's a Monday, Tuesday. So we'll probably have something like Sunday evening, and then Monday, Tuesday will be full days of conference sessions.
Okay, that's wonderful. Please do.
And then, oh, sorry.
No,
I was
go.
just going to say another update is that we are going to be hosting the 4-day CRS course, the EMI course, the what number is that? 278? I forget. So we're going to be hosting that the second week of December in Henrico. So that's December 11th through the 14th. I'm going to be having registration stuff up, and I'll send that out in the next week or two. I don't have it ready yet, but just heads up, we'll have that. So there are not any options at EMI right now. So if you have staff that are interested in this, we're going to open it up to everybody, not just Henrico staff. So that's going to be hosted. I'll send out everything through VFMA. It's not really a VFMA thing, but I'll send it out through VFMA so everybody can get it too.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Kristen. Everybody should really consider attending that class. If you haven't already and you're a CRS community or you're a CRS aspiring community, there's just nothing quite like it. It really gives you a sense of how the program really works in practice, not just how it's talked about in kind of big meetings and national webinars. So John just attended the training in Charlottesville. Yeah, and that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, very educational.
Okay, and I don't know if anybody else attended. Oh yeah, that's right. We heard James City County in the house. Okay. Yeah, okay, good. All right, thank you, Kristen. Thanks, VFMA. All right, so every meeting, we always talk about Virginia's ISO CRS specialist. For those of you who do not know, the CRS program is a FEMA program, of course, but it is administered by the ISO, the Insurance Specialists Organization. I don't know, but they're a consultancy firm, and they also do kind of fire code rating as well as the CRS rating. So you might be familiar with it from that in your local government. And so Emily is our wonderful Virginia lead. And so I think she is on the call. I saw her pop in. Emily, if you had anything that you wanted to update the group with, we're going to talk about new EC template. That was one thing we were going to talk about. And then of course we have the upcoming annual recertification in August, but anything else?
No, thank you so much. That was mostly what I was going to point out, is about that we have the new elevation certificates and we have our our annual third quarter recertification due date sneaking up on us very soon, and that we will be looking for any of those elevation certificates signed on or after July 7th to be on that newest form.
Okay. We're going to talk about the EC, but it's pretty straightforward. You have to use it now. Please don't use anything old. Thank you, Emily.
You bet.
Mary Carson,
Insurance.
can I, sorry, I just want to chime in real quick about the elevation certificates. We're going to host a training on the new elevation certificate this fall and partner with the Virginia Association of Surveyors. We don't have any real details yet. I'm going to be teaching one to some Henrico people in September. So it'll be sometime after that, but just want to give everybody a heads up. And that'll go out through VFMA and VAS.
Okay, that's the fall as well.
Yeah.
Super. That's great. And if there's anything, I don't know if you were considering recording that.
Yeah, I think the one through VFMA, it'll be virtual, so we can record it. The one I'm doing is in person in September, which some people can come to that if you want. I don't know yet. I was volunteered to do a full day floodplain thing with our development community. So I'm trying to come up with topics. So I don't know yet how much space we'll have like extra, but if there's extra room, if anybody wants to come to that part, I don't think we will have it hybrid, but if we do, I can let you know. And you can join in just for like the elevation certificate part. We're going to be talking about some Henrico specific things though too, but then just like the regular training that we do with VFMA and VAS, that'll be virtual. So we could record it and put it on like the website and share it with the group.
Oh, that's super.
And I'm thinking probably like October, because the Henrico one is September, like the last week of September. And I need to get it done first before I can have a training ready. So sometime in October is probably when it will be. So we'll send out information soon for that.
Okay, great. And we'll share everything widely with our group too.
Mary Carson, I did want to add, this is Emily again. We are working on updating our EC training videos that we have on our resources website. We are just in the process of getting things approved by FEMA so that we can have those available, but we will be working to make sure that we have the training videos and such on the website the way we do for the previous EC.
Okay, that's great. Okay, and then before we jump off of Emily, I think that there was a request from the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission to review the crosswalk for the Hampton Roads Hazard Mitigation Plan for CRS credits. I don't know if there was an update about that.
I will check with our tech reviewer on that courtesy review.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions for Emily? Before she's off the hook until our report outs. Okay. Uh-oh. All right. So I don't know how closely everybody has been following the Virginia Resilience Working Group. The kind of long story short on this working group that's been assembled by the General Assembly as a requirement in code from one of the last legislative sessions. I can't even remember, maybe 2023. It's all kind of a blur, maybe 2022, was to convene a resilience working group to discuss the way in which resilience work is being conducted in Virginia. And the reason for the creation of this working group is that there were many different pieces of legislation and interested parties that were thinking about introducing legislation to provide some like guardrails and some framework and plan to all of the many resilience efforts that are underway in the state. And the idea was some people were interested in having a board govern the decision-making process for the distribution of the Community Flood Preparedness Fund grants. And that board could have some sort of decision-making ability as it relates to planning for how the Coastal Virginia Resilience Master Plan would prioritize projects and how that planning document could potentially relate to the expenditure of funds and the awards of grants at the CFPF. So that was kind of one interest. And then there was an interest in creating a kind of a flooding authority or a kind of agency entity within the state that would look at prioritization of projects, spending of money for projects. But the focus of that effort was at how federal expenditures will be utilized in the state. So more of a Army Corps of Engineers type focus, federal program focus. So getting like the FEMA grants maybe better aligned with Army Corps projects and any other federal money that's coming down the pike. So that effort was also underway. And then the administration had an interest in creating an authority that would have a governance structure as well over resilience actions in the state. So lots of different competing interests and lots of different, conflicting efforts all happening at the same time. And so a way around this was the administration said, okay, let's try to herd some of these cats and some of these interests by creating a resilience working group that will be made up of a lot, basically every single state agency that has some resilience work, which is absolutely every single one almost, and universities that are engaged in this work. And we all know how engaged universities have been in the resilience space. Then all of the PDCs have a representative on the working group. I think that's true, hopefully.
I think it might be.
Oh, okay, just two. Very interesting. So, there's representation, no local government representation, which continues to be something that we advocate for in all of these technical committees. Yeah, obviously. So we're trying, but so all that's to say, a work group has been meeting under the facilitation of the Virginia Commonwealth University's facilitation program. And this working group has met, I think, maybe 8 or 9 times, right? It's been significant. Yeah. So it's been significant. There have been a lot of discussions about what is actually happening in the state, who are all of the factors, what is the best way to structure decision-making, prioritization of resources and projects, and how do we get everything aligned so people are, for the most part, happy and satisfied. I don't know that there's been, wild progress in the sense that everybody is now on the same page about this. But I think that it's helped at least focus some of the big moving parts. So the VCU convening group has created some draft recommendations. And if you were at the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission meeting, I think the Coast Resiliency meeting last month, they were just released the day prior. And so that, we went through them briefly just to get the highlights. So we're gonna just introduce them to you all and try to get some sort of like barometer for what you all think about this. There hasn't really been an opportunity for the facilitators and the working group members to hear perspectives yet from the people who are actually going to be administering this work. And so we hope that we can get some feedback if possible from what you all think. All right, so I'm just gonna go through and talk about some of them. All right, so from a resilience planning standpoint, there's been a discussion about, this is in the recommendations, changing the code to align the resilience plans with one another and then actually tie the planning to funding and outcomes. So similar to the way in which hazard mitigation plans are tied to the eventual expenditure of FEMA dollars, there's been some interest in actually getting these resilience plans to really speak to funding that's available through the Community Flood Preparedness Fund and through future funding. As the Federal Infrastructure and Jobs Act continue to funnel money down to the state and to the local level, this could be very helpful in aligning and preparing communities to go after those resources. Okay, and then within the code, there'd be a framework and direction for planning and a baseline for funding. So it's kind of providing a framework so people can expect how to do this alignment. I'm sure there'd have to be some training and advisory services provided for how this would actually work. So you all have been doing your resilience plans. Some of the resilience plans are really focused on getting funding because you maybe created them for the purpose of getting the CFPF. So I'm not sure if people are already doing this in some communities or not. I think that planning schedules is probably pretty important. And this is for the state, right? So this is making sure the state is producing planning documents with each administration. So we definitely have had some problems with the 4-term limitation in Virginia in our resilience space. I'm sure everybody feels like there are problems with the 4-term governorship in all of their spaces, but it's been particularly difficult to get things moving on our side of things. And so keeping everybody kind of on the schedule could definitely be helpful. Okay, anybody have any opinions about this? A lot of this is also about keeping the state accountable in its resilience plans and flood risk plans. Okay, feel free to use the chat if you don't want to contribute. Okay, so there's been a recommendation made about the master plan, and this is the statewide flood risk plan to create multiple regional plans. So the idea would be to keep the kind of method of the coastal resilience master plan and its focus on regions, which was all part of the planning framework. That's how they initially scoped that planning framework document, was that it was by PDC essentially. And so the recommendation is to make it regional. So it's not just a flyby large non-coastal statewide effort. Okay. Yeah.
So I was in one of the, I think it was the second meeting this group met. And they broke into breakout sessions, and they were having a discussion about how they get localities to do resilience planning from a state perspective. I made the comment that, you know, you could utilize existing processes like comprehensive planning, hazard mitigation planning processes to, you know, align with the state processes to get resilience planning done at the local level. They, at the time, seemed to latch on to that idea. I firmly believe that that's how we should do things in the state. And it should all be tied to the funding, planning and funding outcomes. So I think a recommendation to them should be to use these existing processes to get that continuity from the state level planning, so that every locality has an opportunity, not dispersed like we're doing with the flood preparedness fund, to do resilience planning as part of their comprehensive hazard mitigation plan process.
So statewide hazard mitigation and get that to speak to the master plan.
And most of the hazard mitigation planning is done regionally through the planning district commissions. Most one felt swoop, you know, in a couple of cycles, a 5-year cycles, you could have resilience plans statewide.
Yeah, and I think that there's been some, you know, discussion about using hazard mitigation plans. I do think that, you know, some regions are using that hazard mitigation plan as intentionally creating it pretty intentionally big, so that when storm events happen, resources can be used and they aren't constrained by very prescriptive text. And that makes sense because we don't really know how storms are going to impact us. So that's the only thing. It would transform the way in which hazard mitigation plans are written, but that might not be that.
Yeah, I mean, you could specifically focus on flooding,
Yeah.
that particular hazard.
Anybody else have a comment about that?
This is Kristen. I'll just add that, I mean, we, like our PDC, and I think the coastal PDCs in general are currently working on regional resilience plans. Ours is separate from the hazard mitigation plan. I personally would prefer it to be separate from the hazard mitigation plan because of what you were talking about, Mary Carson, with, you know, some of the regions making them purposely vague and focusing on different things. But I think it could have value. But I also, and I think having it kind of on this regional or state level is helpful, but having the option to dive down more on a local level to make it more specific. But I think statewide, you're going to have regions where they just don't have capacity or the resources to do that. You know, they're not going to be able to do it on the local level, even on the regional level, it might be tasking for them. But for us, you know, we're kind of waiting for our regional one to be finished so that we can take it and then expand on it to make it more specific locally. But I do think having something more statewide and, you know, encompassing everyone would be helpful so that we have some general idea of what we're doing and that it's consistent around the state.
Okay. And what about a, you know, statewide plan that has like general goals and purposes and values outlined, and then a regional plan beneath that might have priorities, strategies, goals that are reflective of that statewide plan, but maybe more specific to the, you know, to that region and its specific risks. Do local governments feel as though that approach is too prescriptive? Do you like your local autonomy to do what you want? Are there feelings of priorities being set by the state, maybe not being what you want in your approach?
Would those be the same goals that we already have, like in the hazard mitigation plan, or?
So it's a good question. I mean, so the coastal resilience master plan has priorities and it has its goals. And, you know, they're written broadly enough that I suspect that they would not be inconsistent with your hazard mitigation plan. But I think your question is a good one because it reveals that there might be, you know, all these all these strategies, all these priorities. It could get muddy or confusing as to what strategy you're employing for what, prioritized purpose. Just a thought. Not sure.
I'll weigh in again real quick. So I think it depends entirely on how they're going to be creating these state priorities. Because I feel like there's not a whole lot of local input right now. Sure, some of the PDCs are being represented, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the localities are actually being involved in those conversations. So the hazard mitigation plan, for instance, the state hazard mitigation plan pulls in the regional priorities to make the state priorities. So if it was something like that, then maybe, but that presents some issues because, you know, the priorities aren't necessarily consistent, and then you end up with like a billion statewide from all the different plans. But I think if there's local input where they actually collect local input across the state, like real input, and listen to it, then that would be something. If it's going to be done in a vacuum without our input, then we would not be okay with that on the local level in our community because we're doing a lot of things. So if it's going to be like restricting us to something, that means that we can't be doing, you know, what we're doing with our program, then we wouldn't be interested in that. But that being said, there are other communities in the state that may prefer that because they don't have the resources that we do to be able to, you know, to come up with this on their own.
Mary Carson, I think it depends on what the plan is trying to do.
Yeah, I agree.
And at the state, you know, so there's no right now, at least with the coastal map plan, the statewide plan is currently being worked on, or they're starting to work on it. There's no connection between that project. The projects that are included in the state plan, the coastal map plan, are just projects that localities. And so those are all being identified, proposed, developed, implemented at the local level, regardless of, they would be doing that with or without coastal maps. So I think for the vast majority of projects, that's going to be the case. We don't have a statewide system of infrastructure for flood protection that's similar to like the highway network, right? So what we think would be really helpful would be to have a kind of a nested approach where we figure out kind of what are the things that can be done at the state level, where you get the benefits of scale, you have the identification of like a state policy, but that the actual kind of the plan, so to speak, that actual projects, implementation, changes on the ground, those are things that need to be done at the local level. In some places, maybe it's beneficial to do that at the regional level where we can reduce some redundancy. I think some localities with some region and maybe better than others. I think for Hampton Roads, our communities are doing a lot of that work on their own, and so our role in the process is more facilitating information discussion between them, actually doing that work for them. But in other more rural areas, actually, a regional approach would allow us to not have to have so many of those costs at the individual locality level. But really, I think it's a challenge right now. I'm not sure that this strategy that's currently underway, it doesn't seem to kind of fit very well with how things actually get built on the ground. That's just my piece.
I think it's helpful because I do think a lot of the conversation about this plan and these planning approaches is getting closer and closer to tying plans to projects. And so, you know, all of these planning discussions, they're happening in these working groups. They're happening at the technical advisory committee in theory, and they're not happening with local government staff. And I think that it's really important that you all be aware that these conversations are ongoing and they're only going to increase as the impacts increase.
Yeah, one other thing I would add is, you know, that could change if the state were to weigh in on funding, right? And so right now there's a disconnect between the master plan and the community flood preparedness fund, or whatever sources of state funding, financing there might be. If that changes, if it becomes a part where basically the plan is the decision-making kind of process for how those funds might be expended. So right now, there's not. So if we change that to the point where you have to be in the plan, and we're going to use we're not going to do a competitive grant program anymore. We're going to say that we're going to come up with a plan. The state's going to say we've got $100 million this year. You know, we're going to, similar to what we do with long-range transportation planning, we're going to decide how we're going to spend that money through this planning process. That would be very different. In which case, you know, you could make the case that having a little bit more detail in the state plan would make a lot of sense. Now, at this point, you know, it seems that you know, what they're doing right now with the flood modeling, aggregating the data, providing those data sets to localities or regions to do their own work. That seems to be kind of where they're heading right now, and then as far as kind of policy, our priorities or goals or possibly until they get to the point where there's actually a direct connection between funding of projects and what's in the plan. I just don't see a lot of added benefit in adding more and more stuff into the plan because it's not connected to decision. The level of decision making is where you really need to have that kind of analysis. The real work needs to be done where the decisions being made. Right now, the decisions are all being made as a well.
But I do think that there is interest in this working group recommendation to address that very issue.
Yeah.
First bullet. So that is what, these are the conversations that. Okay. So the last bullet on this slide is, you know, once the TAC has completed the second update of the Coastal Resilience Master Plan, the idea would be to rescope the coastal TAC to bring it statewide. This will make it a big old body, I would guess. So we'll talk about next, the next thing that we're going to talk about, that the administration has said that this statewide master planning document will be completed by the end of the administration. And that statutory due date was 2026, which everybody had a lot of heartburn about getting to. But now that's been moved up. And so it's begs the question even more, you know, how much can we really accomplish in that? So maybe it'll be a framework first, like we did with the coastal. Not sure. Okay. All right. So this is getting to the locality readiness. This is some of the recommendations under that section. This is probably our favorite recommendation, and hopefully it will be yours too, but maybe not, which will be good to talk about. Establish a grant specialist position to help get money to localities. So we've been beating this drum. Can we please have a grant writer that lives in every region, or even just get one at the state that can work with local governments, go down, have a meeting with them, handhold through an application process, whether it be a simple application process for the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, which is a low threshold application, or a complicated FEMA BRIC application, which is the highest threshold. And so, you know, there are programs in the middle and application processes that are, you know, kind of middle of the road difficult. But, you know, this is something that we've needed forever. However, the need is increased because of all of the federal money that's coming down, you know, just billions of dollars over the next 7 years. And we cannot receive this money if communities aren't positioned to receive it. And not just communities, if our PDCs who serve as the pass-through for many of our FEMA grant programs, especially on the Middle Peninsula and on the neck and on the Eastern Shore, cannot handle the management of grants, then, you know, we're in real trouble to get that money to the localities. So many of us in the room are, you know, have more capacity, understand grant writing, have access grant resources in the past, and even our most well-resourced communities are struggling to access these resources. So imagine how communities that are very resourced are feeling about missing and all of this federal money. So if you disagree with me, I'd love to hear why, but this seems like the best for me. Okay. Oh, Carolyn needs to go. Hey, Carolyn, great. Yes, and we were going to include the slides from that meeting. That's wonderful. I don't know if Carolyn's hopped off already or not, but thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn recently left the city of Hampton, and of course, it's now the state. Okay. So the positions, this is more about the grant writing positions. They could be embedded within the PDCs. We've talked about this as a model for regional CRS coordinators. PDCs can just serve this tremendous role, and they already are. As you know, our HRPDC and PDC, MAC PDC are doing, as well as the short PDC. So CZM grants could be, you know, that grant model program could serve as a model for getting a lot of this money passed through. How about self-assessments, right? So there's a recommendation to get communities interested in this work, right? In resilience work, in climate change work, in flood risk work. The RAFT program has opened the doors to communities thinking about resilience in a way that they never have before. Again, for many of our Hampton Roads communities, we're just a little bit further down the line of having to think about all of these things, but our communities and other parts of the state may not be aware of all of the different planning resources that are available, all of the different financing resources that might be available to help build technical knowledge and capacity in a community to address some of these risks. So, you know, there's a recommendation to have more engagement with communities, exposure to what's going on elsewhere and how strategies can be implemented in communities. This recommendation I think is really interesting and good. So to have a chief resilience office that actually has staff. So if you'll recall, Rear Admiral Ann Phillips was the coastal special assistant to the governor for coastal adaptation and resilience. And she was an island with an intern and a gas. And that was at least she had a that was okay because it was the first and it was what we got, but she was very limited. Her capacity was significantly constrained. And had she had a staff of many, and they weren't students, she could have done much more. So I think that we're all kind of aware that there is much more happening in this space. That's only going to increase with time, and having staff and dedicated resources to provide continuity and consistency would be tremendously helpful. Right now, the resilience office for the state it's Matt Dallin and Carol. He's for Carter. And that's not enough staff to do what they've been asked to do. And so having a dedicated set of an office where staff can really contribute to much of the work that's happening, and they're annually funded, would be greatly helpful. That's my opinion. Others may disagree, which would be good to know. Okay, we're just going to roll through. Local readiness. So I think that this is good. State agencies are doing a lot of different things, and we've all seen VDOT really kind of take the lead in their resilience planning as an agency. And it would be helpful to have, clarity and review of how each agency is working together and independently on, on even something as simple as planning to a specific sea level rise curve, which we seem to have consistency over through, executive order under Northam, but it would probably be good to ensure there's alignment. Okay, reimbursement of grants. It's just a problem to require resource burdened communities to pay upfront for their grants. And I think that, there's a lot of interest in eliminating the requirement for grants to be reimbursed, especially if they're going to a local government that's trying to implement a flood reduction project. So this is one of the recommendations.
So.
Any questions?
I agree with what you're saying about the financially burdened localities, and that there could be some sort of upfront funding that is going to, I think the realization just that will come with criteria that must be fulfilled because somebody's got to watch the money.
Absolutely.
So it's a great idea. It needs
a check.
Yeah, it's got to have a check and balance.
Yeah. Understood.
So I mentioned this at one of those work group meetings, but there wasn't a lot of appetite for it from the state. For some communities, I wonder if there's like an idea of having the state actually step in to manage projects and be the fiscal agent instead of just being a grantor. Might be something worth looking into. I know that's a lot of work, and with in fact, you also be some of that can be contracted out, but for a lot of the smaller communities that don't have where you have a handful of staff to do everything. This is a huge lift, and a lot of those communities are also the ones where when an event happens, it's that much more devastating because they don't have the capacity to actually effectively respond. So having the state actually step in instead of just almost inviting trouble by giving them money and then them not being able to sign off on everything and dot all the i's and cross all the t's, but actually having the state, whether it's BRA or whether it's the Resource Commission or some other agency that is actually the fiscal agent for those projects, that might be something.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I wonder if that would also be true for the loans, which are
Yeah.
Sure. Right. Okay. Vulnerability assessments at the state and local levels. You know, this is something that the Coastal Resilience Master Plan certainly did. They tried to do a vulnerability of assets assessment that was pretty darn comprehensive, but I think maybe a call for this to be statewide. You know, there's a lot of interest in having some numbers behind, you know, what is the cost of this? It's a really scary prospect, but I do think that it could be helpful to bring awareness and urgency and hopefully increased funding support. Okay, resilience data and resources recommendation, survey of agencies and localities to identify data needs. Is this something that you feel like people are checking into local government staff and saying, what are your data needs? What are your limitations? Feel like you're getting your data needs met? Voices heard.
I think, you know, on this topic, one thing I feel like that comes up in these discussions is that different people have different ideas of what data means.
Yeah.
And so I think when we're having these discussions, and maybe this group can push for that, but to be more specific about what we're talking about. Or raw data, so like say collecting LiDAR data or building footprints or all sorts of planimetric data is a very different thing than developing an H&H model, doing a flood risk analysis. And I think we're not, when I've heard these conversations, I kind of feel like it's like they're not using the data, are they? They didn't really know what they're exactly what they're referring to. This is kind of amorphous idea, but some more specificity I think would help conversation.
Yeah.
Not only the data, but maybe what the metrics you're meeting with that data are, so that you know how to properly flush through it.
Yeah.
Okay, there's been a call for a work group. So I guess it's like the continuation of the work group. What was this recommendation specifically? Continuation of the work group. What about a local government working? That'd be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're asking for knowledgeable representatives, so. People that are actually working with this day to day.
Yeah. Clearinghouse. I really am curious to know what people think about this. And those online too. It'd be great to know what y'all think about this. Do we need a clearinghouse? Are there clearinghouses? Thought we had some. It's not working.
I think that goes back to Ben's comment about if you're going to create a clearinghouse of data, then there needs to be a set group of or realm of data that is reasonable to collect. And then rules on how to report it, I guess.
I don't understand what they're trying.
Yeah.
I think it gets back to this, like, what exactly are they trying to shout? We have a lot of different data that's out there right now, but I think it just depends on what they're trying to do. If they're trying to say, okay, we're going to take the analysis that we did in the master plan, and those, you know, all the tables, all the flood risk metrics that they calculated, and we want to just kind of put that in a user friendlier format. That's what they're talking about, so that's okay. See that, I know, like right now, right, to get access to, you go to the PDF, have a website that's not very. Some of those metrics, they're not all on the portal, but there is the server where you can go to Amazon server and download the actual data. another user-friendly way to actually make that data. I can see that being helpful. But we're not gonna set up, or unless they're taking like a collection, or they linking to other data sets like right now. So for example, if you want to go get a line hour data, cloud, point cloud, or you want to go get DEMs that are developed with that data, Virginia, we don't host it anywhere. We actually, so the USGS or NOAA hosts that data. You gotta go. There are ways to go get that data, but you gotta kind of how to get there. That part, it's hard just like linking to things. Again, I think there's more specificity, like having someone actually grab out what are we talking. Would help to play. This is the kind of thing where like a high level concept doesn't really do a good job of communicating what we're trying to do. So describing it with examples would be, I think, much.
Yeah. Kristen?
Yeah, so it was kind of hard to hear everything Ben was saying, but I think I generally agree with what I heard. But I think it goes back to, Ben's comment before of we need to know what they're talking about with data, because there is just so much different data out there for this. But I do like the idea of a clearinghouse for at least some of it. Like we have the GIS clearinghouse, which I'm assuming maybe that's what they're thinking of, because that's the only data clearinghouse I'm aware of. So like all of the modeling data and things like that we're going to have for, what they're doing with the master plan. Like it would be nice to have access to all of that and have it in some kind of place where we can go and download it, including, some of the more raw data like survey data and things like that. If they're doing that, similar to like FEMA has the map information platform, which we don't have access to, but people that are doing work with FEMA mapping would have access to that. So you can go in and download like not just the H&H models, but the survey data and the topography data and things like that. So I think being able to have access to all parts of it, if they're going to have models and that type of data on there would be useful. But then it also depends, what else are they going to make available to us? Is it going to be data for, if they're doing like the vulnerability assessments and things like that you're talking about, like, is that going to be on there? Even just having access, honestly, to like plans, if we're going to have different regional plans and local plans, just having them all in one place could be useful to go find them and download them. Because right now the Wetlands Watch website is the only one I'm aware of where we can even find some of the approved resilience plans right now. So I think it could be incredibly useful. It's just unclear what is going to be on it, I guess, and how it's going to be used.
Yeah. Right, I agree. Okay, so thank you for kind of your feedback and engaging in what this working group is trying to do. We'll keep you updated on what the eventual product is and what the outcome is, which is, a recommendation that will likely result in some sort of legislative change. So we'll keep you updated on that. I'm going to leave the poll open and just keep moving forward. This is the reference to the meeting that Carolyn mentioned in the chat, and she included the link for all the slides for the presentations. I would encourage you to take a look at this if you find that the highlights that we're going to present are of help or of use or helpful to you or of interest. We're going to very, very quickly just hit it. Hit the highlights. Okay, so the Community Flood Preparedness Fund and the Resilient Virginia Revolving Loan Fund information was announced. And so this is the next round of funding from the CFPF, in addition to the new manual that has been released and the round of funding for RVRF and the new manual that's released. DCR gave an update on the Coastal Resilience Master Plan and the statewide Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan. And then finally, there was the release of RFPs to support the state's work in getting this resilience work done. Okay, and then there's a link there in slides as well. All right, so round 4 of the grant manual was released for public comment. Comments are due August 6th, so this is kind of time sensitive. You can submit them through the links that are provided. $80 million are available. 50 million is for grants and 30 million is for loans. So the CFPF has always been allowed to release loan funding support for applicants, but it's never been realized yet. And so the grant manual does have details for how a local government would go about getting those loan resources. Okay, and then they provided an estimated application window of the fall with awards announced in December. And I think that, you know, when we've had similar timelines, it's been pretty tight. So could go a little bit beyond those months. Okay, this might be very difficult for folks in the room to see, but this is a breakdown of the resources that are available. So planning, capacity building studies, it's 50 million. Resilience projects is 25 million for loans. And there is startup resources available for short-term loans of 5 million. Wait a minute, Madison, did you want to do this?
Yeah, I totally can. Sorry if you asked me to the beginning. I got kicked off of Zoom for like a minute. I have no idea why. Yeah, so the planning, capacity building studies and resilience projects piece, those are the same 3 categories that we've had in all the previous manuals. Like MC said, it's just now for the first time, there's also loans. So the piece that you're seeing here is that resilience projects in that second column or row rather is just for loans. And then that startup funding, that $5 million, like MC said, is short-term loans for those localities who need upfront funding to kickstart other activities funded by CFPF grants. So if you've gotten a CFPF grant and you need more money upfront to help kickstart that project, that's what that set aside is for. And then if you go to the next slide. So there's the Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund. So another acronym for everyone to learn, the RVRF. The first draft manual for this program was released beside the updated CFPF manual, also for public comment. Comments are due on the same date, August 6th. They can be submitted through a form that DCR has created or through the Virginia regulatory town hall process. These comment periods are the same. There's not a separate one for the CFPF and a separate one for this new Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund. It's the same one. So you just submit your comments on both programs through the one form or through the one comment section in the regulatory town hall. You can go ahead to the next bullet, MC. For the Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund, there's $18.5 million available. You can keep clicking through and see there's $13.5 million available via loans and then $5 million through grants. So originally, this program was kind of advertised as only being kind of a loan program. There was always the potential for it to also give out grants. So it is going to have some money set aside for grants in addition to loans, but the majority of the money through this program is going to be through loans. You can hit the next bullet, MC.
I think I did. Oh, application window. Can you see that?
Oh, for some reason I can't. I don't know if others online can. But the application window is the same. Oh, now I can. The application window is the same as the CFPF. Once again, these programs are meant to go side by side with each other, and we'll talk about some of the comparisons between the two in a second. But once again, it should open. We heard yesterday from DCR that they're expecting it to open on September 1st, so the very first day of September, and then be open until November, with awards being announced sometime right before Christmas of this year. For the Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund, we have a couple different categories that it's funding. For this go around, DCR has mentioned that in future rounds of the Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund, the categories could be expanded upon and include more eligible costs and projects. But for this round, this is what they're sticking to. So just so everyone's aware, there might be other application categories in the future of this program. But for right now, this is what they're sticking to. So that first category, there'll be $5 million available through loans to be used as a non-federal match for federal resilience grants. There'll be $7.5 million available in loans for the hazard mitigation of individual buildings. There will be $1 million available in loans for the capitalization for local flood resilience programs, and then $5 million available in grants. This is where the grants piece comes in, for capacity building for local flood resilience funding programs. And what those local flood resilience programs are essentially, you could see it as a mini Resilience Virginia revolving fund, but it's only serving that community or that locality. So this is, those local flood resilience programs are meant to be revolving loan funds at the local or regional level. So kind of the way to view the comparison between the Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund and the Community Flood Preparedness Fund is that the Community Flood Preparedness Fund is primarily grants, and it's meant to fund community scale or regional projects, whereas what is being prioritized in the RVRF is primarily property scale projects, individual homes, private property owners, and it's mostly being funded by loans. You can go ahead into the next. So here are our very high level concerns through reviewing both the CFPF and RVRF manuals. We have a couple more than this and we can discuss these, but we wanted to highlight some of the big ticket items. We kind of broke it up into ones that have continued over from previous manuals and then ones that are new. So something that is remained true from the previous 3 manuals, and they have highlighted it even more so in this new manual, is that funding existing staff is still an eligible cost for these grants and these loans. So obviously that's a huge barrier for staff at the local level who are trying to complete these projects. And it's something that we're really going to push DCR staff to reconsider. A new requirement that is both in the CFPF manual is that the CFM must be employed by the locality. So for those that are unaware, all of the projects that are submitted to CFPF in that project category, those on the ground activities, must be overlooked and approved by a certified floodplain manager. In previous grant manuals, the certified floodplain manager could be someone that was contracted out by the locality to approve their project for them. It didn't have to be someone on staff. In this new manual, DCR has specifically outlined that the CFM must be employed by the locality. They cannot contract this person out. And so we have concerns with this because, yes, obviously the gold standard would be to have a CFM in every locality, but obviously that is not the reality. We're nowhere near close to that. And it's a big barrier, obviously, in getting people trained, time, resources. So we're really going to push back on this and say, obviously, yes, we want to get there eventually and have a CFM at every locality, but that's just not where we're at right now. And so we need to be able to have localities contract out CFMs for this requirement. You can move on to the next. Sorry.
You wanna have a discussion and that's-
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I think that's one of the things that we provided some feedback on, Ray, that I would first pulled out that it just seems like I think it concerns about cost, about localities have floodplain management programs that are approved and signed off on by FEMA. Every locality has a designated floodplain administrator. Requiring a CFM to do this is another bureaucratic checkbox that may or may not be effective to how the locality actually administers its floodplain management. Now, that person may or may not actually have any real knowledge of the benefit of that flood protection project, right? They may or may not be an engineer. They may or may not be qualified to actually make that assessment. So I think this is So I think it just seems to be like it's their crimes, they're assuming that in CFM, those things that a CFM may or may not actually have to take into account. I did notice that in the manual, it does allow for regionally employed CFM, so if EDC as a CFM, maybe that means that the locality can have that person sign off on it. But again, it still doesn't account for the fact that it's like, if you really, what they should be doing is having the administrator sign off on it. That person is the one who's in charge. Dealing with flooding in that community, you know, and being the person, it's like names on the record. And to go away from that is inconsistent with how FEMA administers National Flood Insurance Program and CFR regulations that dictate how that program operates. So I think we'll probably make the same statement. I don't think we're going to make it competitive. I think that PCR and say that localities have somebody who's in charge of this. That is the person that should be, you know, told that they need to sign off on this project. If they say that project will deal with it, that should be good.
Yeah, I mean, same page about capacity and all that stuff. I will say that many times the local government staff in very under-resourced communities who are in charge of being the NFIP contact don't know that they might be that contact and have very limited knowledge sometimes about the NFIP. So I agree, and we're definitely in our comments going to say, I'm sure exactly the same thing, but we will be saying that having NFIP training in a community is a good thing. So I do agree, but I do think that the principle behind it is right. All the more reason to have a regional support person who can provide the assistance across the region. But we, you know, there are concerns with, you know, just limitation of knowledge about what the NFIP is. And of course, communities can get on probation and anyway, I think you both know. Okay.
Okay, I'll keep moving on and just, we will have time for discussion on this, but thank you, Ben, for that. So another new component of the CFPF that was not in previous manuals is that DCR has listed that there will be a $5 million grant funding cap for the project category per applicant per award round. So any single applicant per award round will not be able to receive more than $5 million in grants underneath the project category. So we're a little concerned about this just because there have been projects in low income communities that have gone over the $5 million mark. And so kind of wondering where else they're supposed to get the funding for this, and other concerns of, you know, if localities can't get more than $5 million through this program, how else are they going to be seeking it? There are also pros that we've pointed out with this. We think, you know, some of the motivations behind this new requirement is to be able to spread out the funding amongst the state and different localities, because there has been a good chunk of that funding that's gone to certain parts of the state more than others. So, you know, trying to like level out where the funding is going across the state, but we definitely want to hear folks' thoughts on this $5 million cap, which we can go ahead and do now if we want to, since we're on it.
Very limiting.
Very. I think our recommendation is going to be to increase it to 10. Because that's where the applications seem to be, you know, coming in with the exception of Norfolk's. Well, that's the main outlier.
They just look at it as they're hamstringing the program without a real good reason for it. There have not been a ton of applications for more than that. they could just use their discretionary authority to just say, we're not gonna do more, but to put it in there, really, and forecast forward that we want to arbitrarily cap it at 5 million when we don't know what people are going to be submitting in this next round, and we don't know what kind of projects are going to be coming forward. I mean, I think, you know, if we had known, for example, that Norfolk was going to get the sign off on everything, and they were going to get that much money from the federal government, and they were going to be like asked to go now for construction. If we had known that when we were first designing this program, would we have made the same decisions for how it's constructed that we did, right? And I think in this case, you don't know if somebody in Fairfax or in West Virginia, if there's going to be some emergency funding for FEMA, it's going to say here, if you can come up with 50% of the match or 30% of the match, but that match might be $20 million. We don't know, but if it's Buchanan County come up with $20 million, I mean, it just seems like they're just putting a rule there's no, I can't think of a good reason for it because they already have the ability to spread the money around. This is not going to help them anymore fund additional projects or more projects throughout the Commonwealth than what they're already able to do with the existing structure. It's just going to tell localities, don't come to us for big bucks. Sorry, when we know that those projects are already being identified in a number of places throughout the Commonwealth. I think we're probably going to pass them, just get rid of that caveat. It's not that they're going to do it probably, but
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like a straightforward way to go about. If the rationale behind it is to try to spread it out, it just doesn't seem like a straightforward way to do that. Because what if, you know, there are, I mean, I know for a fact there are, you know, localities in the western part of the state that are developing resilience plans right now. And what if they have a very large project? You could easily start tipping the balance with a number of large projects in the western part of the state, even it out, if so to speak, right? But you can't if you're only giving out 5 million per.
What if you get another Grundy type project, right?
Right.
We need to move an entire town, that's,
Way more.
and you'd rather not be beholden to the Army Corps funding for those types of projects. Yeah.
All right, so everybody hates that.
All right, the next one, and this is a new one, under the project category, one of the eligible costs is that localities can apply for acquiring lands and restoring them and, you know, having them be an open space in perpetuity. And one of the things in the CFPF manual that was outlined that was new is that only localities can hold these acquired lands. And we're concerned with this because through a lot of our work in this space, we've learned that localities really don't have the capacity to always hold acquired lands, and more importantly, you know, steward these acquired lands, and that there are entities like conservation groups and land trusts that are their sole purposes for this, and that it would make more sense for, you know, the locality to maybe spend the money on getting acquired lands, but then transferring ownership over to them. So this is something we're going to be commenting on as well. Not sure if folks had noticed this requirement or have comments.
And public access authorities and other quasi-government authorities. Right now, it is literally just local governments holding and owning. So it's two different things, the way that it works. Yeah.
I think if they could get to what they're probably trying to get here by requiring them to have an easement.
Yes, and there is language.
But not actually having holding on to it, just having an easement.
Yep. Our comments are going to address the nuance of that.
Kristen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I would just say, I mean, I agree. I don't like this. This was something that they added to our grant after the fact, after they literally talked to us about not doing it. So it's probably coming from that. So I think the idea behind it is that they don't want it to be like developed in the future, but there are multiple ways to go about doing that. And so I think requiring the locality to
I
maintain
reached
ownership.
out to the main office, I guess about a month ago, just to find out what's going on. They got a message indicating that yours.
Katie, you're not muted.
But they haven't been able to get a team scheduled to come do the installation. I then left another
Are
message
you able to mute her?
ago.
I first thought she was talking about this.
Okay, there we go. I thought so too. I don't think she was. Okay, but I think that their point is that they want to keep it from being developed in the future, but requiring us to own it doesn't, like, that's not the only way to achieve that. If we want to get CRS points for it, or use it for like nutrient credits, then owning it might be the way to go, but again, isn't necessarily required. And there are additional costs to us to own these lands and maintain them. Whereas we could just put an easement on it and have someone else maintain it, like the land trust or somebody else. We can zone it a certain way. We can put, restrictions on it. So we have an issue with this with our own grant. Our grant currently isn't even to purchase properties. So I don't know how they can hold us to that, but yeah, I agree. I'm probably gonna push that we send comments on about this too, because we don't like it with our current grant.
I think they'll be amenable to this because it's just it's a terminology. They don't know the nuance there. That's.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns that we've had with this, and also with the requirement to hold any land in conservation in perpetuity. So again, I feel like they're modeling this in some ways after some of the FEMA programs. And, this is state money. It may be that it's a good requirement, but it may not be the best requirement for every single acquisition project or proposal. And, I can think of a number of communities or neighborhoods around here that were, in hindsight, were poorly designed, poorly built, but aren't, necessarily in areas where you couldn't have a more resilient design neighborhood. But you would need to go back in and basically retrofit everything and raise all the houses and everything. So maybe, there could be an opportunity for the state to step in and help with the redevelopment of areas and not just, buying out properties that are vulnerable because they were built at grade, not because they were built, or because they were built in poorly drained areas, and not because they were built in areas that are permanently going to be, more vulnerable to, permanent inundation in the next 20 years, right? This requirement that, this is just another area where they just use that FEMA mindset of like, well, this is what they require for as a mitigation assistance. Therefore, we can require the same thing for what we're doing at the state level. I feel like it's kind of there's a lack of imagination going on. Like we should be thinking a little bit harder about what we're imposing on ourselves, because this is state money. We can do with it whatever we want. So this is, I think, so yeah. I think it's like, I'm not saying like I think, whether it's the flexibility of allowing a land trust to own the land compared to a locality, or it's saying, or it's the perpetuity requirement, these other things that are put in this grant manual, we are arbitrarily restraining or constraining ourselves to figure out what we can do with this state money to develop more resilient communities.
Yeah, and I mean, you could do demo rebuild, which is a FEMA program that gets to your point. So there are options. Okay, let's keep going.
Yep. Another thing that we really think is just a mistake, but I wanted to point it out to people so other people can put it in their comments because it's a big one. MC, there's another line there that's not just showing up if you want to click. Yeah. Is that in the disbursement section that outlines how the loans will be dispersed within the revolving loan fund, it says that they will be given on a reimbursement basis, which just does not make any sense for loans. The whole point of loans is that you get the money up front. I really think it's a mistake, but just wanted to point that out to folks. We're definitely pointing it out in our comments. It definitely would be worthwhile for others to point out as well. And then we just have a poll on this asking folks if they plan on submitting comments, and wanted to ask folks if there were any other major things that stuck out to you all that you wanted to discuss that you're planning on commenting on?
Okay, we're gonna zoom through this. Coastal Resilience Master Plan Phase 2 will be released December 2024. So this is the truncated timeline by 2 years. So look out for this. Oh, excuse me, that's standard. We knew that this was coming. It's this statewide plan that has been done. That's one, moved it up by 1 year. So, once the statewide plan, then they're gonna look at doing these regional plans. So I can anticipate that what we're gonna get for this statewide plan is likely going to look like the Coastal Resilience Master Planning Framework. I think we should all be prepared for a little bit higher level assessment and analysis, with the goal in the next administration to go deeper. So we'll just get another tag and we'll just. Okay, coordination, trying to do better. This is more from that large meeting. This is how they anticipate all the plans will work together. You will note that this is supposed to be a locality-led, informed by the state process. So the concerns that have been expressed in this work group are reflected in the current plan for how the plans will work. Okay, so we'll see how that works. Okay, so the state has also released RFPs to support resilience planning. This is the building up of DCR's capacity to do this work. They have to contract it out. They quite literally cannot do it. So they're going to be using consultants, and they're going to be, qualifications based. They may award multiple contracts, and I don't know that they have actually let the RFPs. I don't think so. Okay, so that could be at the end of the month, likely. So just know that there will be contractors doing this work, and we'll keep you all updated on that. I want Madison to be able to talk about what we've been working so hard on, and a new resource that's available through the Coastal Zone Management Program grant program, the Go For It.
Yep. So we've talked about this several times in this work group, bringing our CRS training that we've done over the past several years online, so people can have access to it if they can't do our in-person 5-hour workshop, and then expanding this so that it's statewide available as well. So we've released 3 workshops. One is our CRS introduction workshop for any communities who have done the in-person training with MCRI. This is the online version of that. And then we created workshops that is specific to 2 CRS activities. Those 2 CRS activities were chosen by this work group through polling, and we had decided on 330 outreach projects and 450 stormwater management. So how these workshops are composed is that there's online training videos, and then that there is a learning assessment after the videos. And then each workshop, each workshop highlights specifically how Virginia communities can maximize benefits and points within the CRS program. So it not only gives an overview of what these 2 activities are, but then also cites examples of localities who are already getting points in these activities, and also legislation and requirements on the state level that localities should already be getting points for within the program. So just really showing how folks can, 1, earn points, how they document points in this activity, and then how to maximize them as well based on what's already out there. If you go to the next slide, MC, this breaks down what each workshop includes. So the first workshop is the longest one. It has 3 parts. So it covers an introduction to the National Flood Insurance Program, as well as Risk Rating 2.0. The second part talks about the CRS program in depth and how localities can join the program. And then the third one includes an analysis of the costs and benefits of joining the program, and then resources in joining the program that localities can take advantage of. And then that second workshop, once again, it focuses on activity 330, and it's broken out into 2 parts. The activity workshops are broken out by the elements within those activities. So the first part covers the first two elements of 330, which is outreach projects and flood response preparations. And then part 2 covers program for public information and stakeholder delivery. And then similar with the CRS activity 450 workshop content, it's broken up into 2 parts. The first part is stormwater management regulations. This is the first element within that activity. And then the second part has the remaining 3 elements, which are watershed master plan, erosion and sediment control regulations, and water quality regulations. You can move on to the next slide, MC. Information about these training opportunities is that we did get them approved by ASFPM for CECs. So the longer one, the first one, you can get 3 CECs for, and then the 2 activities that we have workshops for, you can get 2 CECs for. The way that you get those points is if you pass the learning assessment, that's at the end of the training, you just submit that certification or that certificate to ASFPM to get those CECs. And then we do have a registration fee for these 3 workshops. Each workshop is $25. And we're really doing that because we want to continue, to keep our website up to date, our training videos up to date, and in the future as we create more. So this fee is really to help support all of the online resources that we have been made available through our work group website and through these online trainings. And then to the next bullet, MC, I just want to point out, and please ask questions if you have them, but on the website that MC looked at earlier, each workshop has its own instructions on how to sign up for the workshop. And I just want to emphasize for those that sign up just to read all of those instructions, because since you do have to pay for it, we just want to make sure everyone's going through that process correctly and you're not starting the learning assessment before you've watched the videos, because if you just speed through the registration process, you're not even gonna get to watch the videos and you'll just go straight to the learning assessment. But as long as you follow those instructions, you should be good to go. You can go to the next bullet point. And then each workshop, just so everybody has an idea, it will take 2 to 3.5 hours to complete, but you don't have to complete it all in one setting. So that's the main reason why we want to make sure y'all are reading the instructions, is that you can, once you've registered, you can come back to it, watch the videos at your own pace. And then once you're ready to take the learning assessment, you can take it. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. And I think that's it for that, MC.
Thank you, Madison. So also the assessment is very straightforward. It's like our, it's a little bit more content driven than our polling for CECs, but we just have to have an assessment to get the credits for ASFPM. Madison put a ton of work into these videos. If you do watch them, please let us know. I mean, we'll be able to see on the back end of our side of things who is watching them, and we might follow up with you if you do take a look, because we want to know how it worked and whether or not you found the information useful, if it was, worth the $25. We're just really excited to see if this is something that would be of value to you all. And Coastal Zone Management Program is funding the time to do this, and then the resources, as stated, will go to fund management.
Are they set up to where you can do a portion and then come back in and do the rest, or go back and visit a part that is it set up?
Yes, so you can come back. It's like I said, once you register, you'll have access to, it's through a website where you're going to create a login and register. So once you've created your account, you'll be able to go in and out of it and access if you want to watch just 30 minutes of the part 1 of video and pause and come back. Yeah,
Thank you.
And you'll have access to the slides and the content, forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it per person or per organization?
Per person, per test, I think is probably the best way. Per assessment. And it includes a lot of Virginia specific examples, but it would be valuable if you're outside. Okay. New elevation certificate form. Please, the download is annoying. Download it as save as online. Just download it to your computer and it'll work. because it didn't work for us and we were freaking out. You'll be able to open it that way. There's no grace period. So please tell everybody in your community to use this elevation certificate, so you're not on the hook with dealing with the headache of someone filling it out late or filling out the wrong form. So this is really for your sanity. Because it'll fall to you to have to put down. Okay. All right. Okay, so we want to talk about the Hampton Roads PDC project, but we've got 15 minutes left. And so I want to just give people the opportunity online. If you have something that you want to provide in terms of an update, you can unmute and or add your update in the chat. For those of you who are new, this is typically when someone asks questions, notes that they're struggling with a particular issue, or provides an update on a new cycle visit, new class or CRS. But it certainly doesn't have to be CRS related. It can be anything you want to talk about. You can either raise your hand or just come up.
Yeah, so. the
That's
LiDAR
about-
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this at our last resiliency committee meeting, but we had put in a proposal with the USGS to get new LiDAR data. That was going to cover, so this is the area that would have covered the 8 localities in Eastern Hampton Roads, so York County, Pocosin, Hampton, Newport News, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Virginia Beach, and Norfolk. The good news is that, so that's moving forward. We're working on the contract, hope to have that signed with USGS in the next few weeks. But the really good news is that because we put in this proposal, they had extra money, and so they're upgrading the data. So it's going to be QL1 data for LiDAR birds out there. That's really good. It was going to be QL2, now it's QL1. And they've also added the Eastern Shore, which we had talked about. I had reached out to the PDC folks about it, but we weren't able to get them on board. But so our contribution to the project, we're funding that through some resources we have at PDC, but there's no additional cost. So the Eastern Shore communities are also going to get that data, and I'll have more about that hopefully in the next few weeks in terms of scheduling and everything. And that's it's a really big deal. That data's been used for a lot of projects over the last several years. It's about 10 years old now, I think, or 10 or 11 for the Hampton Roads communities. It's about 8 for the Eastern Shore. So anyway, good news.
Whoa, that's huge. And Tom, the GIS nerd, I'm sure is saying thank you.
Happy to help.
That's terrific. Anybody else?
Hey, this is Whitney with Virginia Beach. I don't know if y'all have any ability to provide feedback on the elevation certificates, but I'm definitely starting to get a lot of feedback from the surveyors. One is like the whole download issue, and depending on what version of Adobe they have, like even saving it isn't really seeming to work for them, and they're having a really hard time getting into it to fill it out. So like I'm just hearing a lot of it's not user friendly. What else? Elevations in C right now is making them enter to the hundredths instead of the nearest 10th. So I don't know if that's supposed to be a change or not, but I don't think it is because most of the base flood elevations are to the nearest 10th. And then adding an option for NA in the boxes, like some of them have like drop downs and checkoffs, but like they don't always have an NA on it. They're also saying when they insert their seal, it goes in at about a 1.5 inch and it should be a 2-inch seal. And then also, depending on which version of Adobe you have, when you sign it and like save it, it's not locking it once it's signed. Like anyone can kind of go in and change things on it. So that's just some of the feedback I'm getting right now. They're enjoying and liking, which we all knew was good, the ability to break down engineered and non-engineered flood vents, but trade-offs.
Jeez. Thank you, Whitney.
And MC, if you have a better avenue to like actually submit feedback, let me know and I can email it all to you.
Okay, I was just gonna say, if you could just email bulleted what you just said.
Yep.
And then same goes for anybody else that has specific things that when he did mention, email them to me and then I will send them to FEMA. Well, that stinks.
I mean, hey, we knew there was going to be growing pains and a learning curve, so it is what it is.
Yeah, Kristen.
It's not really CRS related, but I just want to let the group know that I'm going to be hiring a floodplain position, hopefully very soon. So just want to put it out there if anybody's interested, or if you might know somebody that's interested. It's going to be serving on my team, basically like the local floodplain manager. So it'll be a floodplain coordinator position, working with me and Caitlin, doing all things that we're doing in Henrico right now. I don't know exactly what the pay will be, but probably like 70 or 80-ish at least. So please reach out and let me know. I'm trying to find somebody that could hit the ground running, so we can get all of our projects and things going. So I will share a posting whenever I get it, but trying to kind of gauge interest right now to get HR moving. So anybody reach out, please, if you're interested or know somebody.
Gonna have to go to some job fairs and let everybody know that career in our state right now, most demand is floodplain. So that's Hampton. Hampton's already got theirs posted, so Christian, you better run.
Sorry. I know it's not gonna happen that fast for me.
How about, so Hampton, Henrico, Wetlands Watch,
We're not, right?
a little different, and Ben.
I guess, so for those of you that know Grace, he's leaving us to go up to Baltimore, so we're gonna be hiring as well. So if you don't want to work with the public, that's how work for us.
For us. We're in a war. We're in the hiring. But when someone who looks like they have potential local government candidacy doesn't work with our position, we will pass them to Henrico, we'll pass them to Hampton, and obviously Ben talked about.
City of Petersburg would also like to be included in that list.
Okay, Daryl.
Thank you very much.
Daryl, please send me, if you already have the posting, send it to me and we can do like a big blast out.
Yeah, we have an FPA already posted. It's already on the street.
Okay, if you send it to me, I'll send it with Mohammed's, and then Kristen when hers is ready too.
Yeah, Mary Carson, if you send it to me, I can add it to VFMA email blast. I was going to send yours out, but if you want to share the Hampton one and the Petersburg one, I can put them all together and send it out in one.
Okay, great. So Daryl and Mohammed, please get that posting to me today and I'll send it to Kristen and then she'll include it in that big email blast.
As soon as I get off.
Oh, this week or next week. Okay. Sorry, Daryl, what'd you say?
As soon as I get off, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Good. Okay. Anything else? Updates? Alyssa. Hey, Alyssa.
Hi, I don't know if this is the most CRS related thing, but I guess in the news there's been some stuff lately about like insurance companies like pulling out from other states and people not being able to get insured. So people have kind of been calling Tristan and asking her about it. She wasn't able to make it to this meeting. But we were just wondering if anyone has heard about any of that happening in Virginia, because I think it's starting to make people worried since we have, you know, all of the flooding and everything. So I just didn't know if anyone else had heard of that around here.
So Alyssa, and I think there was an email around that I need to respond to about this or a related issue. In Virginia, in coastal Virginia, we already have homeowners insurance companies not writing homeowners policies because of climate, well, because of flooding, and then more recently because of future flooding, climate change. So that's already a reality for
region. We personally have been turned down from multiple homeowner insurance companies because of the proximity of our house to a flood risk. So that's already happening. But in the flood insurance programs, companies are not pulling out of coastal Virginia to our knowledge. All
Okay.
Virginia communities have access to the National Flood Insurance Program. There might be maybe a Cobra area on the eastern shore, but those are the only areas which are barrier islands where you can't get a flood insurance quote. But that's, you know, not even true for Sandbridge, which is, you know, technically. So tell people that we don't have that state insurance like Florida does. We don't have that problem yet. So everybody should, it should be business as usual.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
I mean, other than like, we haven't been able to get them. Yeah, but that's been the case for almost 10 years. Probably 15 years. Okay, Rachel.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to share that the city of Roanoke is hosting a prepare-a-thon event this September 16th at the Berglund Center Coliseum. If anybody's in the area, we'd love to see you there. We're going to have a lot of vendors there. DCR, hopefully FEMA will be there. Some neighboring localities, the Red Cross, some people from Virginia Tech and USGS, and if anybody's interested, I can send you some follow-up information. We'd love for Wetlands Watch to be there. And I'll probably follow up with you, MC, afterwards to see if you are available and interested in being there to share the work that this group is doing. But just wanted to spread the word about that event that's coming up in our locality.
Thank you, Rachel. It's on our calendar and we plan to be there.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you.
21.
Okay. Let's talk about the PDC potential regional CRS support. Y'all are up.
Well, thank you, MC. Yeah, so this will be brief because almost noon. But the HRPDC, we put in a proposal with the CFPF to do an assessment of how we might better support our localities with their CRS patient. And last month, we signed a contract with AMT to support that work because the CFPF will pay for existing staff. And we talked about earlier, so we're contracting out some of this, which is good because Grace is leaving us, so we don't have capacity. Anyway, at this point, so the goal with this is to look at all of our existing regional work and see how we could kind of tailor it to help you all get for the CRS. And so what we're doing right now, what things we might do at the regional level, we're trying to kind of play redundancies. We're looking at which things we can do at scale. We've got a bunch of different elements that we're looking at. And then we're also going to be looking at possibility at how we might frame up a regional program for public information. This is something that's come up in some previous discussions with this group. We never really really studied it to the point where we could make an informed decision about whether or not we wanted to actually invest in that. Jimmy's going to be the PM for that work on the AMT side, and then also the PDC staff going to be supporting it. But I think we've got a few questions, and she's going to. And we're going to be sending out questions to our campus localities. So if you're not in campus, sorry, this is not for you. I mean, we'll be able to share it and your other PDCs, or you may be able to benefit from it, but the focus is going to be on the HR PDC community. And then we're going to be looking for interested staff to help kind of vet the work and provide feedback on the work that Jenny and her team are going to be doing. So, want to say anything, Jenny?
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty good synopsis of what we're doing. This is funded through the CFPF, like you said. So we'll be reaching out to ask some questions, get some feedback on ideas that people may have on needs that the HRPDC can provide regionally for CRS support. But the primary focus will probably be on doing a PPI for the region. We're certainly interested in hearing what the other ideas and feedback could be for additional resources that could be provided.
And obviously, you can have a full meeting to talk about all that. We can make sure, you know, we get representation from every local government. We can do a big outreach push to get people in this space if it's helpful to you. If it's not, that's cool too, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was going to mention is that we are happy to coordinate and try to figure out how the resources generated through the regional CPI, if it were to be established, could also benefit the communities that are outside PDC jurisdiction. So I think that that's important for you all to know. Outside of the regional PDC's 17 member jurisdictions.
17.
Okay, so we'll look at ways in which points could still be earned by communities that participate in the CRS Workgroup that may not be directly in the PPI for, you know, HRPDC, REACH, Mission Creep, if that's something that you all have, just outside of your purview.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for the other localities that are on the line, I mean, we have close working relationships with the other PDCs that are coastal zone, and then a handful of the ones that are outside the coastal zone. So I'm just not going to run the communications program.
Oh,
you're on your own. Yes.
In those scenarios.
Yeah, and we're looking for, I think, you know, this idea of we're having discussions with the PDCs about regional CRS programs, things like that. So anything that we can do to help kind of further that discussion and help the state, they, you know, more informed investing in local and regional capacity, we're happy to do. So, and then the timeline for this is over the next year or so, a little under a year.
Less than a year. Yeah.
Less than a year. Okay. I think that's great. I think it'll be really, really helpful and important.
We're looking forward to you helping us with it.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Oh, Grace Tucker put in an article about insurance companies pulling out of Hampton Roads. So this is new.
It'll be in the meeting notes.
This is a
New pullouts.
yeah, so this happened like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. There was another round where there were some big storms that happened. Insurance companies freaked out, they were overexposed in the areas. Matthew was one, but there were a bunch. So like State Farm, Allstate, they all stopped writing policies, a lot of them stopped renewing policies.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell if this is just another example of that cycle. We've had a bunch of major storm events that have come through. But yeah, so it's something I think we're keeping an eye on it. But yeah, we don't know like what the full extent of this is going to be. But as MC said, Virginia doesn't have any sort of state insurance pool like some of the other, like I think, you know, North Carolina's got a special wind insurance program. Florida's got something similar. So yeah, anyway, so that it's not, yeah, it's something that we're keeping an eye on. So far, it hasn't been systemic yet, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. It felt pretty bad when we were buying our house in 2014.
Yeah, that was around the time we stayed with a lot. Maybe just like, you know, nothing in 95.
Yes.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think.
It's not tied to flood insurance. I think that's the other thing.
Correct.
This is a separate, like, overall, like they are making a judgment about their exposure and their general risk to property, to insure property. It's not about, are you in a floodplain or not?
Right. Right. Okay.
They take our money and they were.
I know.
A lot of work, that's what they're trying to do, right? Yeah.
Okay, anything else? That's right. The good of the group. All right, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody online. If you need anything, just reach out.
Thank you.
Good luck, Madison.
Thank you.
Okay, stop recording.